This is a request video that I got a couple of days ago. Um, God, I hope this fucking records. The last video I did, I talked for a half hour, and then when I go to get my video, it just suddenly stopped recording after 14 minutes. Brand new Macintosh computer, QuickTime program, no reason why. Goblins get in there. So anyways, you do what you got it, you do what you can do. So this video is what do I think about the Greek city-state, concept of the Greek city-state system of government as opposed to the states of America, the various states. This request came on the heels of my request video, Democracy. And in that video, I was talking about Plato and Aristotle and the Greek city-states. Those guys had a very good idea about what politics was and different types of politics, because they were always, each city-state had their own political autonomy and then control the area of land around them. And so there were lots. There were like 50 or something independent political units in the Greek world. Only the Greek world was basically like a country in itself. It was kind of like, the Empire of Greece, but there was really no leader. Some dudes would try to take turns being leaders. The Athens tried to be the leader for the what was it called, the Delian League, after they got attacked by Xerxes in the Middle East. They wanted to get an army going so that they could defend if they got attacked again, and that was the justification for that, and they kind of abused their power. So there was really no leader. It was just this world, and it was, you could kind of compare it to the Roman world. You have or you could compare it to America even. You have this, you had a contiguous culture with the same language. In ancient Greece, a good example, Plato, he was from Athens, and he did dealings with the tyrant of Syracuse. Athens was a democracy, and Syracuse had a tyrant. They were a tyranny, and Plato went over there and was in his court, the tyrant's court, and talked to him, but then realized it was no use because nobody could talk back to the guy and everybody was afraid of him. So he left. He escaped from the tyrant of Syracuse and then wrote letters to him afterwards once he was safe, just scathing letters, insulting him and telling him why tyranny is bad, and the only reason he didn't speak his mind when he was in his presence was because he knew he'd get assassinated, and that tyrants don't have any real friends and all this stuff, and tyranny's the worst. And yeah, that's on Plato Dialogues on the page on my website. So so they knew their stuff. But my point is that that was the Greek world. It was kind of like Plato was just in another town in the Greek Empire that had no leader, and the tyrant of Syracuse was just another one. And so, because they were communicating with each other, the whole Greek Roman world communicated with each other. For example, ancient Rome, when they were founded in 753 BC, really early, they had Romulus, who came from the Sabines, and those people came from the Trojans. They were taken over, and the Iliad from the ancient Roman writer wrote about the Iliad, about Aeneas's trip on the boat and the Odyssey here, between getting taken over in Troy and then moving into Rome. So the Trojans became Romans. And then after their first king, Romulus, died, their second king, who they sought after because he was the smartest man in the whole area, wasn't a Latin or an Etruscan. He was a Sabine, a different type of person, a different independent unit up there in the mountains. But the Sabines said that they were descendants of the the Lacedaemonians, the Spartans. They were a colony of the Spartans. So they're all colonizing each other and speaking the same language, and um, but yet they were all completely independent of each other. Um, Now, so I guess what would be the argument of having one continuous unit of power? You know, the biggest empire of the ancient world was Rome, and um, that was an autocracy. And you know, so people might say, oh, so and that was an autocracy. So people might say, oh, biggest power, autocracy, therefore best political system is autocracy. But Rome, in the time, and I talked about this in the monarchy video, in the time of its autocracy, wasn't wasn't advancing or advanced. There's nothing that happened in the Roman Empire that's worthy of reading. There's just a couple of books. All of the books from Rome come from when it's a republic, the tail end of the republic, and even before that. There's more stuff than in the deep end of the republic before the transition than in the Roman Empire. So if that tells you anything. So, but in ancient Greece, they had, especially and only in the democratic towns, Athens, did they actually have literature and writing and preserve the writing. So, so anyway, what would be a reason why you would want to have a like a common, like a, you know, a common a capital to your empire? And that would be for war. That was the justification for the Delian League by Athens. But before they got attacked by the huge 300,000 person army of the Middle East of Xerxes, they didn't have any kind of league like that. They fought them off with the political system that they already had. So, you know, it was all the different city states just voluntarily agreed to throw troops in to defend themselves. You know, and certain city states got special honors. You know, like Sparta and Athens, and so yeah. The question is how much of central power do we really need? One way of looking at it is we should really compare the current political state of America with the when America was actually founded, because America was founded, and we wrote all of our our laws, the blueprint for our society, our a federal constitution more than 200 years ago, 230 years ago or something, and all the states were like more than 100 years ago, a long time ago. So, and since then, like they designed the Constitution to say every state will have 2 senators and like 2 governors. But the problem is since the states were created, now there's zillions of more people living there than there were before. So that means that you would want to, if you might want to keep it at the same democracy ratio to and be able to adjust for it as the populations increase. So then you would give more senators, but the best thing to do is to just take away the central power. I think one good exercise to do if you're going to compare about how much power the states and the cities should have and how much the actual federal government should have. I think the best thing to do is to try to get into the mind of like Plato and Aristotle and the guys in the past and see what they would think. Because Aristotle Politics is the original political manual, handbook. And Plato is the original like political deep thinker. And so we should continue our conversation based on what they said, and so we can have common ground for us all to be talking about the same thing. And what Plato, I mean, Aristotle did an amazing job of writing politics. It was the perfect boiling down of all of the different strengths and weaknesses of all different political systems. So one good exercise would be, what would Plato think? What would Aristotle think of this world and the situation that we have now? And I think they would look at um, and all of the smart people from the past and present would look at America now, and they think that it's too top heavy, too federal. Um, but I mean, this is a super complicated video request, and it requires. I mean, this is probably the ultimate question, like period of life. So it definitely requires a lot of deep thinking. I wanted to do the video, just the video request first, because you would need to, in order to have an educated opinion, you would need to know the federal laws and the state laws. And I don't know exactly all the federal laws and state laws. I want to put the federal law code on my website. That's going to take forever. And then I'd like to put the Colorado Constitution on my website. That'll take forever. But once you do that, I do that, you could like read it or figure out a way to read it, have it read the whole thing to you, like speed read, and then you could get an idea. But I mean, I think people people choose where they live, and I think religious laws and personal freedom laws, they should be directed by the people who live at that location. If you don't like it, then you can just move to another place where they're like how you like it, or you can change the laws locally. If the laws are controlled locally and you don't like the laws, it's a lot easier to change them, because all you have to do is change them locally. There's less people to convince to change the mind of. If you're going to try to change a law and then change it nationally, your decision goes out the window, and your power goes out, and then you give up, and it turns into like a tyranny. And so that's why we should have abortion and all the religious laws, abortion, marijuana, drugs, personal freedoms, as much as you possibly can, like pretty much all of it, to the states. And and even down to a city, I would say, I would agree. City, once it's a certain size, like a legit city, because then people can actually have freedom of their own lives. If they don't like their life, they go, okay, well, what city has the blueprint that I need, and then they can move to that city, and that's everything that they need. They get to have abortions and smoke weed or do whatever they want. And then we would know a lot more about human nature. If there was a city that had all drugs legal, you would get to look at it and go, okay, well, what's the pros and cons of that? Because now we don't even know. So I do like the idea, basically, of the Greek city-state. I mean, it doesn't have to mean that, like in the UN for the Olympics, that you would, and for my timeline is based off the UN. It doesn't mean that you have to break them up into all different independent countries and call them independent countries. I mean, we already have like different countries that are officially countries that are tied together. All the different acolyte states of America that have to do what we say because we have control over them. Or the you have alliances of countries like NATO and defense agreements and trade agreements. That's kind of like tying different individual polities together. So that's really not so different than having each city or in each state kind of like their own independent country. But if you're going to look at it on the map and in the Olympics, yeah, it's still America because that's how it was in the past. But you make everything else more on a local level because it gives people more power over their own lives, and can allow them to have more interest in what's going on politically. And we'll know what's better and what's worse. We'll know. So, anyways, yeah, I mean, I think we could change it and decentralize it enough to make it even really similar to the idea of the Greek city-state. In the Greek city-state, let's talk about the difference in technology and what that means. Okay, in the Greek city-state, that was the biggest unit that you could of people that you could get together and kind of still communicate with each other, because you could have people go to the square. You could have like 6,000 people at the central square hearing one person, and that I think you'd only need like a couple hundred to control the whole city state. One thing, interesting thing about numbers, democratic division of power, is that the number like 300 to 600 is always popping up. I'm looking at all the different numbers of like senators in ancient Rome. It was 300, and then I think Augustus jumped it up to 400. So because he wanted to give titles to people who had done him all his favors, and then it got as high as 600. But 300 or 400, that's about how many people control China, a country of 1.2 billion. You know, maybe 300. That's probably about as many people as control America, the donor class. Same thing, probably in other countries. So it's, you know, or maybe even the world. It's like 300. And you know, I don't think people should look at, oh, because Rome was controlled by 300, even Athens. In the Athenian constitution, they're talking about 300, 500, up to 600 people in their senate. And then that would get divided down into their own little, you know, neighborhoods. But yeah, people shouldn't think that just because that's how it was then, that that's how it needs to be now. Plato, for example, said that the richest person should only be 5 times richer than the poorest person. So imagine if that was really like that. That would really take away the centrally controlled power. I think we can have, you know, if you want to change wealth discrepancy, I think the best way to do it is to do it all the different creative ways. You know, it's great to join Wolfpack, and it's great to vote money out of politics and vote for the right people in office, and vote for all of the social welfare programs and against low taxes for the rich and all that kind of stuff. But it's also good to do all the other things, promote the value of not spending too much money. Am I getting sidetracked? I'm talking about, see what I'm talking about. The question is how you make, is it better? And I say, yes, it's better, but how do you make it better? You make it more democratic by making your, you know, your lifestyle democratic. And so, yeah, you just value, like me, riding my bike all day long and filling myself. That's perfect. That sprays the value of making yourself better at the no expense to the world, because you're just riding a bike, you know, and then you're thrashing yourself, and that's it. And you're eating, and as you get healthier and fitter, you just want to eat healthy, fit food, or lean food, clean food, which isn't expensive to produce, and then you start that lifestyle. The problem is that's not a consumerist lifestyle, and all the people who have to get jobs, all the worker bees in the world, like literally everybody would hate your guts. Like if I ride my bike, like why would I have all day long in my room? Why would I have any reason for anybody to have any love for me? Everybody would hate my guts because, you know, am I contributing to the teacher? No. Am I contributing to the cop? No. Am I contributing to the business of the restaurant? No. How about the movie theater? No. Cars? No. Houses? No. You name it. Whatever, you know, travel industry. No industry is benefiting. So then people hate you, but that's what you need if the world's going to survive. So you have to pump that lifestyle, and too much of the time people are pumping the lifestyle of the ultra wealthy. Yesterday I was telling my mother about, you know, that it was good for me to ride my bike all day long. That's really the key. That's the magic ingredient. If I'm going to be successful as a pro athlete, I know I'm 44 years old, but if I'm going to be successful as a pro athlete, I don't even need to be good enough to be fucking as good as the pros. You know, maybe I've been too long and I haven't done a goddamn thing. I'm never going to get fit. I'm still a pro. As far as I'm concerned, I'm still a pro because I live the lifestyle. But if you're going to be for me to be successful, I need to convince my mom to not be yelling at me all the time, telling me it's too much. She likes to tell me not to do stuff. So if I can get her to tell me to do it. But I was telling her yesterday, I was like, look, let me show you. This is why what I'm doing is good. I feel myself ride my bike. Look at the biggest people on YouTube. And there's this video I showed my mom, richest, most highly paid people on YouTube, 10 most highly paid. And they had all these young dudes, teens and early 20s, who just did silly stuff. And they made so much money that then their YouTube videos become videos about, oh, look how much money I'm spending. And then they get zillions of hits. So everybody wants to watch videos of young kids showing everybody else how much money they're spending. Now, people need to realize that that's not healthy for the world, because now you're having all of these high-end lifestyles that require everybody to support them as just people working those jobs, right? But we don't want those people to work those jobs, do we? We don't want them to work those jobs. So don't support that rich ass lifestyle where the kid's like, what's that kid, Logan Paul? He's like, yeah, my boy down in Lamborghini just hooked me up with the Lamborghini. And there's another video. Hey, look, man, my boy's up here in the private plane, brah. Don't we living the life? And then you got that Dan Belzera and yo, what's up? Me and my girls out here spending more money. Woohoo! I rented this, spent all this. It's like, and those guys are the highest paid. Like, so they get paid more by showing how much money they're spending. It kind of seems like this negative feedback loop that's going to just send us all off the cliff. It kind of reminds me of that the Dutch flower tulip catastrophe. A tulip was worth more than a house in Amsterdam until people realized that they're just tulips, and so they all tried to sell them at the same time, and then the next day they were only worth less than like nothing. so so yeah, I mean that's what I think is going to happen. More and more people are going to start doing goofball videos, and then the goofballs are going to be like, hopefully they're not going to be special, and then their numbers go down, and then people stop being anonymous. It's going to be awesome. One of these days, I'm going to have a YouTube friend who is not anonymous, um, and then I'm gonna. You know what would really be cool? There has to be a middle ground in YouTube. You either have superstars who does a video and they get 50,000 hits, and then you comment them and they never comment back because they just have too many stars, and then what's the next level down? Oh right, the completely anonymous person. You know who they are, and then so they're commenting. So yeah, some like regulars, and then you pump that lifestyle up, and then those people, anybody gets the idea that they can do anything, and they're all at the same level. At that point, we will be more open to making local decisions. But that's just one way. I got on a really long tangent, but that's another way to dilute the whole wealth discrepancy thing, so that you can have more freedom. And so yeah, that's basically talking about returning to the Greek city-state. Oh right, this is what I wanted to talk about. In the city-state, you know, that was the biggest political unit that you could have everybody talking to each other because they didn't have telephones and TVs and internet. Um, so it's different now. America, it's kind of like the entire, not just America, but the whole world is basically as small as an ancient Greek city-state. So does that mean that the whole world needs to be one, Greek city-state? And so I would say yes. That's how we should envision is the whole world basically being run by a really smart computer. We have the supercomputers that just basically administer our democratic desires because we all trust each other. Maybe we'll have it people over the age of 30 or something. I don't know. But then you make it everybody just democratic desires because everybody's smart enough. All the little micro decisions on what policies we're going to do. You just vote on it. The computer manages it, and that's your country. So your city state is the planet Earth. But you still, even though you have internet and everybody can communicate with each other, people still, we're creatures of habit. We have this DNA, in us that had us live, tribal lifestyle forever. So, we are going to preserve the whole city-state idea where you actually physically know the people and you're making local decisions and, local policy with the people, the local people. And so, so in that sense, it's kind of like a mixture, It's like a morphing into something different that has the great melting pot of politics, the best of everything. And, and so, maybe our national defense would be this thing that we would be more communal on. And then, of course, the international trade more so. But then, there's the local decisions, the religious and the how you spend your money. We're really local here. We voted to have like a sugar tax. We don't have smoking's not allowed here. So yeah, I like it that Boulder has the identity as like a little city state. It's too bad it'll just get really depressing and it'll lose the life of behind it if you have all these little like giant cities with these suburbs, and all the suburbs, the houses look the same and nobody interacts with each other, and the store is far away, and everybody, there's no personality and there's no to the area because it's just this giant like super city. It's better to, I think, to break them up into just little units like as far as you would drive to the store to get your, your to your store. That's like your circle of influence. But um, but but yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of different ways that we're reorganizing. Like there's like groups of people, like the triathletes, for example. That's kind of like their own community with maybe this a number of people of a city state, but they're diffused all over the world. Um, so so yeah, I think that it's definitely tending more towards that. America is, and I think, or the whole world, but I think America is the best example of an ancient Greece. We're called the United States of America. Our states have more power than the little units of different countries. Like we could all marijuana laws are all controlled by us and other stuff like that. So yeah, I think America should be the place to try to further individualize the various parts of America. I think it's possible to have one giant happy family, but that has different various units of people who are very distinct and proud of being distinct, with even their own laws. I think it's perfectly fine if you want to go and make some little town somewhere or a city. Um, I wouldn't say a state, but yeah, maybe a town where anybody in that town's not allowed to have an abortion or smoke weed, right? Because then that can make you feel holy, and you have your holy city state, And then, but if somebody who lives in your town doesn't, they can just go to the next town for an abortion, because that's the idea that it was in the past. Like if you read Herodotus, he was talking about, or Strabo, people who talk about different people throughout the world. Herodotus is talking about these bald, peaceful people in like Siberia, Mongolia, or something like that. Somewhere in the mountains who were like so peaceful, and all they did was eat berries, and they did prayers, and people would come to them for advice, but everybody left them alone because they were just the freaky people of the mountains. And you could kind of, but they were pretty much on their own. You could term them kind of like their own tribe, their own political independent unit. And so, and then he would talk about the Ethiopians who said they lived 200 years and were really tall, and they were really proud of their lifestyle, about how they fished and lived really basic lives, and so kind of like the Odyssey, or the image you get of ancient Greece with Jason and the Argonauts going throughout all the islands, and there's a new island with a new goblin in the giant in the cave, and this is his domain, and then there's no overriding controlling like empire or whatever, like everything's unique, and that kind of gives anybody the freedom to be their own person, when the society is set up like that. So yeah, I think that's where it's going, and I think that's where America is going more. And I think that you can create that. People should actually try to create their own communities. That's what I'm doing with Boulder. I'm creating Boulder as its new city-state identity. I'm creating Rome, ancient Rome, on Boulder. I'm creating Rome on Google Earth, every single building it, and then I'm going to build every single building from ancient Boulder all throughout the history of Boulder, and then I'm going to put Rome on top of Boulder, and then I'm going to retell the story of Rome on Boulder. And so we can pretend so we know everything about Rome and Boulder, and then give Boulder its own unique identity. I want to recreate Roman history, where we ride our bikes all over the Roman kingdom, because that's the size of the Boulder Canyon or county, and retelling all the different, and so then give Boulder the identity of being the place where people ride their bikes all over Boulder County, and retelling and reliving the history of Rome, and comparing certain cities in Boulder County with towns in the Roman Latin world, um, um, and then even the city itself and the walls and the buildings, and that would give Boulder its own identity, like a city state. And then all the trails, mountain bike trails around here, and that you can do. It's the same thing, like if somebody lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico, for example, they could make a website of all the different mountain bike trails, and And hell, they could even pretend they're in some ancient world and make a fantasy on Google Earth with the walls around it and then I don't know, but you make the world around it, the trails, and then people have their Strava around Santa Fe, and then that's Santa Fe. That's the personality of Santa Fe, and everything, and then or different sports that get popular. So yeah, that's I think definitely people should focus, try to bring more power to the actual town, and because then that gives people more love for it. You know, like neighborhood watch neighborhoods. People don't fuck around with those neighborhoods, like burglars and stuff, because they know people have each other's backs and people are calling each other and stuff. Well, same thing for a city state. If everybody's got this one personality type in a city, then then people would be more harmonized, you know, homogenous. There definitely is something to be said for homogeneous societies, you know, but you don't just have to have racially homogenous. The Roman Empire wasn't racially homogenous. They had people from the Middle East, from Africa, from Northern Europe, the white people, everybody, but it was all in the Roman world. And so, if you had a city state, you know, you could have a homogeneity of mind, you know, and or at least, and if you can't have homogeneity of mind, you could at least have tolerance, you know. But what's going to allow you to have all of those local power dynamics, you know, make the power locally and give power to the local person, and therefore hope and inspiration and a happy life to the local person. What's going to give that to them is giving more power to locally, and not deferring so much to the central government, you know, because now, like Donald Trump, for example, he has all this power, and everybody's kind of deferred to him. You know, maybe in one way, a good can come out of Donald Trump being president, in that people will not defer to the president so much, you know, and they'll want to challenge the president, like people more, you know, everything, or maybe even have more of an idea of making it more democratic, get rid of the electoral college and make it more voting more democratic. We'd have Hillary Clinton if we didn't have that archaic electoral college. And that's another thing that was designed. The electoral college was designed um, for 13 states, and not for not for these giant states where some little New Jersey gets to change all these thousands of votes in California. You know what I mean? So, anyways, I think I've talked long enough. Thanks for giving the request. 32 minutes. It's a good one. All right, peace.